Hello friends, Solomon Smilac here from Baduk.Club, and I've got another video today where I feature my monkey wax. I wanted to go over how to use it, how not to use it, what you're going to need in terms of supplies and preparation, and to give you sort of just a better general idea of what we're doing when we wax our bowls, boards, or any other furniture you decide to use it on. So the first thing is figure out where you're going to put this after you're done waxing it, because if you're using a wax that has linseed oil or turpentine in it, it's going to off-gas, it's going to smell. The linseed oil is going to go through its polymerization process, and so find a place where it's not going to stink up your house. Here I was in my own kitchen, and I started using some turpentine to clean off the bowls, and Sarah wasn't too happy about that. What smells like pine trees out here? Here, it is important to clean off the items beforehand to make sure you've got a nice clean surface that you're going to be applying the linseed oil wax paste to. If your objects are already clean, just go ahead and go over them with a cloth. A clean cotton cloth or microfiber cloth is fine. A tack cloth, something like that. You can always use a vacuum, or if you've got sawdust on them, or compressed air or something like that. The issue with compressed air, of course, is that you're just spreading the sawdust around the room. So what I've got here are, I'll leave it a mystery what you think this is for. I've got these three wooden pieces, and then a number of metal rods over on the right. I'll give you a few minutes to guess what those are going to turn into when they're finished and assembled. And then I've got a set of, I think, rosewood bowls. The first thing I wanted to do was clean these pieces off. They had some sort of brown painted on varnish, looked really tacky to me. Sort of faux age nonsense. I prefer the wood to speak for itself, so I took some turpentine, some quad-aught steel wool, and I set to work getting that old varnish off. You can just use a cotton cloth, and that is the safest thing to do. If you're working with an antique, go ahead and just use a cloth or a plastic brush like a toothbrush. Speaking for myself, I don't mind quad-aught steel wool. It does wear the wood a little bit. If you work with the grain, though, it does come out looking pretty good. It's kind of like 600 grit sandpaper. And it's also because metal is harder than wood. It is going to work quite a bit faster than a cloth will, and there's only so much time in the day. So I'm using the quad-aught steel wool. Again, that's 4 zeros, quad-aught or superfine steel wool. It's the finest. I think. I'm trying to recall how thin those grains are. They're considerably thinner than 00 or 000. Let's see what Google says. Google says superfine steel wool is 0.001 inches thick, whereas 00 is 0.0018, almost twice the thickness. So once you've got them cleaned off, you can apply the wax. Here I've charged up my applicator. I'm just using another steel wool pad. You can use cloth. I'm going with the grain to work the wax into the pores, and that goes pretty quickly on small bowls like this. Go ahead and work it into the other pieces. I think I forgot to put it on the middle. That thin little piece, ended up needing to go back for that after this project was already in the garage drying out. Curing, I should say, because linseed oil, even though it might feel dry, hasn't finished curing, sometimes for 2 or 3 days in the case of boiled linseed oil, and sometimes up to a week with raw linseed oil or special linseed oil, which is what I've used in my monkey wax. You can see just what a nice luster glow you kind of get with the linseed oil paste wax. I go ahead and spread out those towels in the garage to dry. You don't want to crumple them up because linseed oil, again, as it cures, does have an exothermic reaction that generates heat. I go ahead and buff off the bowls. It is nice to wait until the wax feels dry on the surface to buff it. Of course, get off any globs of oil. Linseed will discolor the wood, but go ahead and give it an hour to let that wax set, and then you can buff it off with a cloth, and you'll have enough. All you really need is a thin layer. It might not even be perceptible to the eye, but a thin layer of wax will keep water from landing on the wood. It'll beat up on the surface. It'll keep grit off, and it'll help minimize scratches. If there are scratches, the wax will at least have provided a small barrier. So there's the reveal. It's the little hourglass my sister thought I'd like. And I think I'm going to clean it up and put it on the shop, or if she gets upset at that, I will give it back to her. It's cute, but I don't have much of a use for it. Still, I wanted to clean it up, get it looking better than it was. So let me know if you have any questions about the process. When it comes to waxing a board, the only thing I'd say is, again, many people would say don't use steel wool. You're going to ruin that perfectly flat surface that's been planed flat by dragging the steel wool across it, and it'll cut a little bit deeper at some parts of the grains than in others. With bowls, I find it really helps accentuate the grains, but that may not be something you want to do with your board. And then again, there's also the issue of the fragility of the lacquer grid on a board. Not only is it fragile, it may not look like you're damaging it, but if you're taking off the top layer of lacquer and then a few years later taking off the next layer, eventually you're going to start ruining your grid. It's also made of Urushi lacquer in some cases, and Urushi lacquer is from a poison ivy family. So you can potentially be getting that on your hands, breathing it in. You do want to be careful with that. If you are going to use steel wool and turpentine-based wax paste like mine, you'll want to use a respirator and definitely some gloves. Here's the finished product, and I think they came out looking great. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. I'll be sure to answer all of those. And in the meantime, these items will be up at Store.Baduk.Club. Take care. I'll see you next time.